Okay, you're good to go.
All right. Welcome to tonight's November 18th, 2020 North Ogden City Planning Commission meeting. I'm Chairman Thomas, and I'll be conducting tonight. We will begin our meeting. Oh, were you going to say something, Lynn? All right. Welcome to tonight. Oh, our normal feedback.
Yeah, well, I got it.
If you mute your mic, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Well, welcome. I'm Chairman Thomas. We'll begin our meeting with the invocation by Vice Chairman Mason, followed which being a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Arner. Commissioner Mason.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening with humbled hearts and thoughts. We wish to ask thee for the guidance and the items that we discuss. We ask for the ability to hear various topics and process them and hear various points of view and have open hearts and minds and make decisions which are in the best interest of those around us, and taking all aspects into consideration. We are grateful for the land in which we live and the area in which we live. We are blessed in our lives. We ask for a respite from the current plague which is upon the world, and we ask for these favors and blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, I'll begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Mason and Arner. We will make note. I haven't seen through the participants. Are all the commissioners in attendance tonight?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So make note that all commissioners are in attendance. Again, this is being held virtually by Zoom. Item number 2, our meeting minutes consideration for November 4th, 2020, Planning Commission meeting minutes. Is there any comments or corrections that need to be made on those minutes?
Having reviewed those, I propose we approve them.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to our opening meeting statement. Just so I can get my computer to bring it up. For each agenda item, the city staff will give a report. After the staff report, the item will be opened for other speakers. The applicant will speak first and allow up to 10 minutes. Following the applicant, any other interested person will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. The applicant has final rebuttal time of up to 5 minutes. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, e.g. pictures, written materials, are part of the record and must be forwarded to the commission. Speakers are required to have registered their full name on Zoom and will state their name and address before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, then state your agreed and avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address all comments to the Planning Commission. And please silence your microphones until ready to speak. All right, now I gotta go. There we go. All right, do we have any ex parte communications on the agenda tonight from anybody? Conflicts?
No, as I said, I did take a couple of calls from neighbors of mine asking about the rezone, and I did inform them that it was a proposed rezone from a residential to a civic zone, and there were still high-level discussions about that, but that was my only outside communication.
Okay. Anything else? All right, if not, we'll open up to public comments. If you're here and would like to comment on something to the Planning Commission that is not on the agenda, please type in a chat on Zoom or raise your hand, and Lynn will let you speak to the commission. If you're here for an agenda item or the public hearing, you'll have time to speak when that agenda item is up. We'll turn the time over to the public now.
Eric, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Well, we will move on then to our first administrative item, item number 6. Site Plan Review 2019-2. Consideration and action regarding a landscape plan for the 7-Eleven at Village at Prominence Point, located approximately 1700 North, 400 East. Presenter will be Rob Scott.
Thank you, Chair, and Planning Commissioners and audience. By way of background, the Planning Commission has reviewed multiple versions of the site plan for a 7-Eleven to be built at 1700 and North Washington Boulevard. The City Council on October 13th considered and approved the site plan and requested that the Planning Commission be designated to review the landscape plan. So I've been working with staff and with the applicant and their design team to come up with a landscape plan. As a part of that, there were a number of issues that we worked through in respect to the overall site plan. So it's kind of a combination that I'll be reviewing with you this evening. So
Can I ask a question there, Rob?
Of course.
Before we get too far.
Sure.
So are we reviewing things such as building orientation, setbacks,
No.
things like that?
Nope. You're strictly looking at the landscape plan.
Okay, but was anything of those things that changed since the City Council saw them then?
No.
Or are you going to go into that? Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you a little overview. I've been working with their landscape architect, and based on tonight's meeting, he's going to give me a finalized landscape plan. So the one that you have in your packet is being modified, and I'll review what those things are as part of the site plan. All right.
Okay, so the layout of the physical structures is pretty much in stone here. And
Yeah.
that's what I'll review.
Right, exactly. So let's see. So Lynn, if you'll allow me to share.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you should see the site plan that's before you at this point. Everybody see that?
The one that looks nothing like the last one we saw?
That's the one.
Okay.
So you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor?
I do not see your cursor. I do see the site plan.
Well, I'm sorry. I'll have to try and describe various aspects. Let's go from east to west on the site plan. So obviously Washington Boulevard, 1700 North. You'll see a triangle there. That's the site triangle. You'll also see as part of that site triangle a dashed line going north and south. That's the actual property line. And then from there, you will see if I just put, Lynn, if I expand it, or will I have to share, or can I just expand?
You can usually just expand.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Did that work?
Nothing seems to have changed.
It says your screen sharing is paused.
Okay, just click on that and it start sharing again.
It's not liking it. Okay, how about that? How's that?
There you go.
Yeah, something Zoom.
Okay, good.
I see your cursor now as well.
Oh, wonderful. So yeah, this, as I'm going around, that is the building outline. As part of the discussion with the city council, they wanted to have a building that was not a rectangular building. They wanted to see something that had a little bit more of a view from people going up and down both streets, Washington and 1700 North. So it's got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-sided building. It's going to have 2 entrances. There's going to be a patio out here with 4 tables, picnic tables out here. There's going to be some bike racks on both sides of the building. There's going to be, as you can see, the sidewalk as it comes along Washington and 1700 North, and then an appropriate bit of landscaping. The streetscape, I should mention, is going to be handled. There's a subdivision application that needs to be processed that you'll be seeing on an upcoming agenda. And we will be reviewing and approving the streetscape as part of that subdivision review. The applicant for the subdivision is going to be Meritage, and that's Jack Barrett and his group. So they're responsible for the installation of the streetscape thing. So that includes the sidewalk, the trees, the street lights. There's also going to be here a UTA stop and sign. I don't know if they're going to be building a shelter there or not, but I guess that's to be determined. Hopefully we'll have that answer for you when that happens as well. So that's the basic layout of the building and the corner. I'm going to give you a colored view here in a second that will help you out with the plantings and what have you. So the building has 17 parking stalls along the front here. There's a dumpster. And then along the north boundary, they're providing for an access to a future development site on the north. In the center, you'll see the gasoline islands that are here. And I'm assuming this is where they dump the fuel and what have you into the tanks. Then, let's see, there'll be 2 monument signs, one on 1700 and one on Washington Boulevard. There will be 2 entrances into the site. You'll see the dimension there, 36 feet and 150 feet. This will allow for the tanker trucks to be able to make that curve and turn. So now I'm going to switch. And now you should see the colored rendering. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you'll get a better feel for how the overall landscape plan is going to function. Again, here's the park strip. There's the sidewalk. Here's the patio feature that's there. These are the tables that are here, and then surrounded with a combination of various planters, shrubs, and trees. So that part of it is all up to date. There's also a listing of the various plants and what have you. So I'm gonna, with my cursor, I'm gonna give you a little bit of what's changed on this plan.
Hey,
So,
Rob,
yes.
what are the weird like octagon shaped things with the,
Those should be the trees. Those green.
no, right there, the bigger, it's like, it's shaped like a stop sign with like weird cutouts at every like corner.
Yeah, those represent a large tree.
Right.
Oh, that's the canopy of the tree.
Yeah.
So up above here on the plant schedule, you'll kind of see that those trees are there. And it's kind of hard to read that, but
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
okay, sure. Now as we go west, one of the things the city council requested was to have some trees put along 385. And so the new plan is going to have some, in addition to these shrubs, we'll have at least a tree here. There's a tree here. And then on the north side, this was originally a little wider driveway. They were able to work with us and meet the standard of a 50-foot wide access here. So there's going to be landscaping that kind of is a little more prominent in the northwest corner, and then it'll stretch along this northern boundary line here. That helps them get to their 20%. And there should be enough room there to add a tree in that location as well. So let me just do a quick summary from the staff report. The MPC zone requires 20% of the project be in open space and landscaping. And so that includes not only the green area, but the common open space or the patio and what have you. They're at that 20%. We've reviewed the plant materials and what have you, and we believe they're acceptable. So the city council, again, some of this is a little repetitious and forgive me for that. Requested trees be installed on the west to provide a buffer between the residents to the west and the 7-Eleven. So we'll have a tree here where my cursor is, one hopefully in this island here and one up in this island here to help accommodate that. And the patio, one of the things we talked about the other day, they haven't had a chance to do the actual design, but the recommendation was that they do some kind of treatment to that concrete. So it is a combination of stamped concrete, possibly colored, some kind of geometric pattern, so that there's a little bit better definition between the patio and the sidewalk itself. And then the last thing was that on the north side, this site here, there'll be landscaping that'll be installed on that north side. So that should eventually be a bit better, a better buffer than what currently exists there now. So just going down to our recommendations. The things we're recommending are its approval subject to a subdivision plat being recorded for the property. Let's see, the landscape plan will be incorporated into the site plan approval notice of decision, which I'm working on now. So I'll incorporate your determination here within that notice of decision. There are some technical review conditions that are typical. Those are more we spend a lot more time on those when it comes to the subdivision. Some trees being added along 385 East and submitting the final landscape plan with the things we've talked about tonight. And then with a definition for the patio design, including or consisting of either stamped it could be a combination of these things, stamped concrete, possibly colored, geometric pattern, those types of things. So we're recommending approval subject to the staff report, TRC conditions, the approval of a subdivision plat, and the landscape plan being incorporated into the site plan notice of decision. So with that, commissioners, I'm happy to answer questions.
Hey, Rob, this is Don.
Yes.
My only question, you talk about the trees on the, so we're really adding 2 more trees on the west side.
Right.
Because we've got one on the southwest corner already.
Yes.
Then we add 1 more in that little park strip, one at the top. What I'm wondering about, though, is we're talking about on the north boundary, adding some trees up by the dumpster. That's not even in their property.
So
We can't, how are they moving, adjusting the
that
pavement, or how are they going to
the
do that?
dumpster is actually being moved on the site plan. I should have mentioned that. That dumpster had to be moved. It has a 20-foot setback to the north.
Okay. So that's how we open up the room to get some landscaping on that north boundary?
Yes.
Okay.
At that location. And then see my cursor? So it'll be
Yes.
the northwest
one-
corner, and then it'll stretch along here.
Okay. So that whole paved boundary drops down.
So the property line doesn't change, but the landscape definition will include some sort of an island that comes along here.
Okay. Had me wondering about that.
Sure. Well, it's a little tough. Hey, these guys, hey, the applicants, landscape architect and their engineer, they worked extremely hard to make this happen so it could get on the agenda. So kudos to them. Like I said, we'll get the real refined landscape plan here, hopefully in the next day or so.
Rob, are the monument signs part of this review, or is that taken with the signage and the buildings and?
That'll as we've typically done, that was delegated to staff to review those monument signs.
Okay, because I thought part of what this package was getting the city was a big welcome to North Ogden sign. And when the signs are shifted like they are, they look like a smaller monument sign. And I feel like we're not delivering on that promise that we've talked about for so long.
So that good point. The council talked about maybe doing something down in this area here. And then what they decided to do was to have a welcome to Ogden sign that's actually on the buildings. And so we don't have a finalized design for that, but it wasn't forgotten. It was just shifted from along here up to on the building itself.
Yeah, I saw that was branded on the building. Okay, and was that the decision of the city council? I wouldn't have supported that personally, but that I don't get everything I like. So
they've given us a I think I assume Ryan's here. He can give you a little more detail with respect to that, but that final design for that particular sign, I'm sure that the city council is going to want to look at that.
Well, that's my only concern. I mean, what I'm seeing here isn't, I mean, it looks like fine landscaping, but I just wonder, does it fundamentally lock us into putting these little monument signs here? And that's where I feel like we may be selling, so much worth of negotiations here down the river.
So the monument signs are actually commercial signs. So they'll be advertising 7-Eleven. I assume that there'll be
so those monument signs aren't welcome to North Ogden.
No, they're not. Those are commercial signs.
Why don't we have the applicant come up, and then we can kind of discuss, continue to discuss, or if any questions come up with him. Ryan, are you speaking tonight on this, or?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. Well, thank you, planning commissioners, for we've been working on this for.
Hey Ryan, will you state your name and address?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Ryan Forsyth, 1835 South Highway 89, Perry, Utah, 84302. Anyways, thanks for all your patience and work on this. I know that we spent a lot of months trying to refine a design, and I've tried my very hardest to accommodate everybody's individual desires, as well as the desires of my client that makes a successful business for them. And I feel like we've come up with as good of a plan as we possibly could, given those constraints with UDOT and site triangles and sewer line easements that were put in place, and things that just really affected how we could accomplish, all the original thoughts when this, this piece of property was I guess negotiated in the development agreement. But with that being said, I do think this is going to look really neat. As far as the signs, the city council requested that we put 2 North Ogden logo signs. So I actually do have, it was already proposed on the elevations. The city council wanted us to put the North Ogden logo with the mountainscape in the background on a bronze laser cut sign on both of those I guess walls of the building that are facing Washington and 1700 North. So that's what we've proposed per their recommendations. The 2 other monument signs will be like fuel signs stating the price of fuel and diesel and that sort of thing. There'll be commercial signs. As far as this is the first I'd heard about that landscaping island on the north side. Probably my professionals that were trying to get that everything in to meet the agenda. My understanding with city council was that they wanted trees to the west on the opposite side of the road. And so I'd worked with Jack to install trees not on my property that would help, but I'm not opposed to what has been discussed between my landscape architect, and I think that would look nice. So I'm fine with that if that satisfies what we were going for.
Yeah, come here, bud. I can't hear you. What's up?
Oh, sorry.
You're not on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
As far as the, I think that Rob had a really good point about the patio to make it not just look like commercial concrete. I don't love stamped or colored concrete because I don't think it wears well. We've had problems with it spalling and looking really poor. So I think what we would propose is some nice geometric shapes, maybe different finishes, like some swept finish and some smooth borders and things like that. I really like that look, and it seems to hold better with snow plows, and we hope to own this for a long time. So I really want it to stay looking nice. As far as other things, I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns, but I think we've put our best foot forward to accommodate a lot of different opinions and a lot of different realities. As you can see, if you see down at the bottom right-hand side, you'll see that 10-foot sewer easement. The city council actually requested that we have a rectangular building, but in order to meet all the setbacks and bring it up on the corner, we kind of had to cut off that corner. So we made it symmetrical. And I actually think it's going to look really cool with some picnic tables and put some umbrellas out there. And we're getting that inviting look that we hoped for. It's just not with a big sign. It's more with a patio and a place where people can congregate and meet. And I think it makes a lot of sense. It's definitely not anywhere close to where the planning commission last saw it. So I apologize for that, but I do think that the overall goal of everybody was the same thing, to make this an inviting, warm, and unique building on this corner that says welcome to North Ogden. And I do believe that although this vision may be a little different, I do believe that we're accomplishing the same thing. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions.
Brian, this is Brandon.
Yeah.
So this doesn't involve the site plan or the landscaping plan, but what did the city council say to you that we didn't say to you to get you to change your mind on 2 doors? That seemed to be a huge sticking point last time.
It was a gigantic sticking point.
Like, how can I do my job better? Because obviously the city council has power that I don't.
Trust me, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with 7-Eleven. And to be honest, it was ultimately that I was going to walk away from the entire thing, or they had to do that. And because to be 100% honest, because I was so far into this and had spent so much money, they said that they would do it so that I wouldn't lose the 6 figures that I was into this thing with earnest money and whatnot. So it was mainly that. And with that being said, they are doing some new concepts where they've got, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but they're doing some new concepts where they have almost a Maverick style restaurant inside, like a taqueria. And they thought that with that future style that might work. So they allowed me to do it.
And how do they feel about their?
It wasn't me just ignoring or sandbagging you. It was a timing issue and ultimately where we got to. So.
Okay, thanks. And then how do they feel about their building being branded with a North Ogden logo?
I think they're willing to make a lot of concessions because I was into this so deep. I think a lot of this is to protect me, Brandon, to be 100% honest. I'm doing a lot of other buildings for them. And so what happened, just so you know, what happened was Speedway, you probably saw it in the news, 7-Eleven bought Speedway. And so Speedway, they were slowing down their growth and expansion. And this was on the list to just walk away from this deal. And in order to help me, they just allowed it to go through. To be honest, I feel quite blessed, to be honest, that we're here. So
congrats. Okay. So you heard me state earlier that I have a concern that the landscaping, which is actually super nice. When I look at this, I think this looks nice. It looks unique. It's all, I believe everything you just said. That it's a positive thing. All that I do. My concern remains that the approval of this prohibits the big "Welcome to North Ogden" monument sign that we kind of thought we were getting. Do you care to talk to that at all?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to have, once Ryan was done, I was going to have the public, if any public want to make comment, and then we could discuss with after, if he needs to comment to anything of the public as well. But
okay, fair enough. We can hold that.
Let's hold off and do that. But for right now,
Chairman, let me add one thing. This is John.
Okay.
The big monument sign has always been planned down at the Cooperstown area. When we talked about the "Welcome to North Ogden," that was the point of the statement plaza and building was it would kind of help you feel like you've arrived in North Ogden as opposed to a "Welcome to North Ogden" sign, if that makes sense. At least that's the way I've always understood it.
Okay, thanks, John, for that clarification. As we continue discussion with the applicant, I'd like to give time to the public. If there's any public in the meeting tonight that would like to comment on this. This item is for the landscaping of this project, just for the public comments. It's not whether 7-Eleven is coming here or the shape of their building or whatever, but this is an approval for the landscape plan. So if anybody would like to make comment in regards to that, please raise your hand or send a chat to the group, please.
I don't see any hands, Eric.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to give them their opportunity. We can go back, Commissioner Mason, to your question with Ryan and kind of discuss.
You just gave Ryan time to formulate his rebuttal there. Ryan, did you care to speak to that? to the monument sign at all, and you may not.
So
In my opinion, the landscaping does speak for itself, but it does also limit the ability to put a big "Welcome to North Ogden" sign. And I was wanting just to hear
I
something
can
on that.
I can speak to that. I don't think it was so much, unwillingness to do it. It was how and where and how do we make it work with the site plan and how much land was really available, given easements and site triangles. In that site triangle, we talked about this in depth at previous meetings. Nothing could be over 2 feet high. And then when you throw in where the building is and just how it lays out and how deep that, where the road 385, is it 385 east or west? I can't remember. 385, that road at the rear where you enter our fuel pumps, with just the sheer space to be able to fit something, it was really quite difficult to do it in any real manner. So like John said, the city council said that the future sign, that big monument sign, was always slated further south, I believe, and this would do the same thing. But I understand it was a big thing, and I spent a lot of time designing how that would work and make it work. But ultimately, just with all the different considerations, the different easements, the different restrictions on the site, the city council felt like the inviting patio area with a few signs up on the building accomplished that, and I didn't disagree.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the landscape? As mentioned by the staff with the recommendations or changes in the staff report? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So let me just say, in the recommendation, it says approve the attached landscape plan. The attached landscape plan is going to be modified as it's been discussed tonight.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve the modified landscape plan, subject to the recommendations in the staff report, the TRC conditions, and the approval of the subdivision plat. The landscape plan will be incorporated into the site plan notice of decision. And the one change is that I would recommend that we just delegate to staff to work with a developer on the material to use on the patio deck, as well as the modifications to the landscape plan.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I'd like to point out a comment came in after the public comments were asked for. I just happened to catch it in the chat where a member of the public said it looks like it will be a nice addition to the city. That was one comment.
Okay. Thank you. All right, well, let's start with Commissioner Arner.
Yes.
Commissioner Waite,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker,
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Mason.
Yes, and I'd like to add that I do think it's looks like beautiful landscaping from these drawings, obviously, and I think the overall project looks really nice. My concerns were as stated, but overall I support this, and it's a yes.
Okay, Commissioner Nancarrow.
Yes.
All right, and I vote yes. So I believe that approval does not go on to the city council, or does it, Rob? Are we the approving body for the landscaping?
You are, and as stated,
Okay.
it might be a little bit confusing, but what I'm doing is I'm crafting a notice of decision with respect to the 7-Eleven site plan. So this will be incorporated within that notice of decision. So it'll be in one document.
Okay.
For what it's worth, and I realize everything's over with this, but just my own opinion, getting that other entrance, facing the way it is, nearly offsets the sign for me. Anyway, I really like that, having that big welcome to North Ogden sign, and that was a huge plus originally for me. But I also really wanted a double entrance to this building, and
Yeah, I think the layout would work good.
yeah.
Make use of that outdoor area usable and makes it feel more welcoming.
Like a
You're
plaza.
going to see people and activity around there.
I thought the same
Everybody
thing.
can get their taquito while they're waiting for the bus. I mean, it'll work perfect. All right, we'll move on to our item number 7. The site plan review and consideration of site plan review 2020-10, consideration and action regarding the site plan for Mountain View Park located approximately 875 East, 3300 North. Presenter is Julian Berg.
So, Chair, if I could introduce Julian.
Okay.
The thing that we've been very pleased with is Julian came and approached us about doing an internship. He's a student at the University of Utah, go Utes, and he has done an outstanding job, in my opinion, to, within a very short period of time, accomplish a tremendous amount of work, including the first park designs. In this case, it's memorializing what's there, but that is a huge step forward because we haven't had those kinds of things in the past. So you're actually going to be, as part of your process, this is a 2-part thing. That one memo incorporates both the design and it also is the rezone public hearing to the civic zone. So with that, I'll turn it over to Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. And thank you, Chair, Commission members, and any members of the public. My name is Julian Berg. I've been an intern with staff for the past couple months. And today on the agenda is the rezone of the Mountain View Park at 875 East, 3300 North from R110 residential to the civic zone. And I believe it was in July, the city passed ordinance 2015, which established the civic zone. And part of that is the civic zone for all the city properties that are set aside for public use, such as parks, would be moved over to the civic zone. And the first step towards that is creating site plans that would make them work for the civic zone. So could you scroll down to the site plan, Lynn, please? So yeah, basically, as Rob said, it's basically just showing everything that exists presently as the parking, the items, the square footage and whatnot, and making sure that what exists now fits with the guidelines for the civic zone. And everything noted above, it does fit with everything right now. The fencing is shown on the sides. The parking is sufficient for the civic zone use. All the signage is noted and the trash collection and whatnot, as well as the lighting is noted as well. And anything other than that, everything is pretty much set forward and I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
Yes, Julian, how nervous were you for your first official presentation? Because you did a great job.
Okay, thank you.
No, really though. Calm, cool.
So everybody that's the participants in the meeting, as the map shows on the site plan, marking trees and everything, there's nothing else that's planned to be added. That's just highlighting everything. Everything on the site plan is pretty much everything that's in the park now. Is that correct?
Yes, there's no proposed changes to the park. It's just changing the current zoning from R110 to the civic zone.
Okay. Okay, well, this first agenda is the site plan approval, which is specifically the park, and then we'll recommend the zone change on the next agenda. So hang on there and we'll see. Now let's open it up to public comment. If anybody has a comment or question regarding the site plan. Again, this is simply, I guess, to make it clear, as we've passed the ordinance in the city to designate city-owned property as civic zones, so people know on a map that a park or a city-owned property that may not be developed is zoned as civic, so that some city type of use could be used for that property, rather than typically in the past, it's just been zoned the same as the surrounding properties. And so in that, we have the change the zone, but I believe also then to approve a site plan for that, because Mountain View Park probably never had a site plan approval, or it kind of memorializes the park, in a sense, the design and the site. So again, as mentioned, there's no proposed changes to the park. So this site plan that you see is pretty much everything that's in the park now. I didn't count the number of trees, but it should be exactly what it is, unless one of the trees blew over in the last windstorm or something. So I'd like to open it up for public comment. If you have a comment, please send a chat or raise your hand and Lynn will let you speak.
There is a question about the zoning, but I think we can hold that until the next item.
Okay.
And
Can I remind the public that we're not actively monitoring the chat to answer questions and things. So if you do have a comment, please raise your hand and speak them so they're on the public record. Right? Okay. I don't think the comments from the chat go on public record, do they?
They not unless their name is given and it's introduced. It should be not in the record.
Yeah. So in the chat there is any Campbell. Will there be any changes to the park? And there is not any proposed changes to the existing park. We'll talk about Tony Spencer's question about the advantages of the zoning and that on the next agenda item. And Rob had stated the civic zone has standards that more clearly relate to public properties and spaces rather than the current residential zoning that are standards more towards the single family housing. So it gives us the advantages as we'll kind of discuss in the rezone. But so if there's no more public comments or questions for the site plan itself.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Then any discussion from the commissioners?
You know, Eric, you may, for some of the people that don't know much about the civic zone or listening in, it might be good to explain to them the positive parts of being part of a civic zone and controlling what's there and what's not there, what the city can and can't do.
Yeah, the civic zone, the rezone is the next agenda item, Scott. This is just the site plan for the park.
Okay.
Well, if there's no discussion, then entertain a motion of the site plan.
Well, I move we approve the site plan review, given that the park already looks like this and it seems to be successful, and I don't think we're going to flatten it out any. I think this is a nice layout.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All right, Commissioner Mason.
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro.
Yes.
Commissioner Arner.
Yes.
Commissioner Waite.
Yes.
Commissioner Barker.
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt.
Yes.
All right. Now we will.
How do you vote, Eric?
Oh, sorry. I vote yes. It already passed, so I don't get to count now.
Julian, you're 1 for 1 so far in your career.
That's a good record.
100%.
All right, then let's move on to our legislative item. That is, again, the legislative items are recommendations from the Planning Commission to the City Council. and final decision will be with the city council. So we'll do item number 8, the zone map amendment 2020-6, the public hearing for consideration and recommendation regarding rezoning Mountain View Park property located at approximately 875 East, 3300 North from residential R110 to the Civic C zone. Julian, you want to kind of recap a little bit about the zoning you had there?
Basically everything that was said before, and I liked what Rob said about the civic zone standards. They more closely relate to city properties and spaces, while the current zoning right now is R110. It's more private residential, and distinguishing between these would be beneficial, I believe, as it would allow the city to more broadly define the use of the civic zone and the properties that they have. And Lynn, if you could scroll down to Exhibit B, please. Yeah, this is just an example of what it could be. And looking at a zoning map, it would more clearly define the parks that the city has. And right now it's kind of hard to distinguish where they are at because they're all included within residential zones. So I think that'd be a big benefit for the city. And any other questions at all, I'm willing to answer.
Commissioners,
Yeah, I do.
any
So
stumpers?
obviously we have more than just this park. Are we going to take these one park at a time, or are we going to be hit with like 4 or 5 parks at a time in the future, assuming this passes?
I'm not sure. That's up for Rob to decide. I've crafted a bunch of other site maps for these parks so far, but that's up for Rob to decide when we get these presented to you guys.
Okay. We can talk about that maybe after, but I see advantages to both. I mean,
Something maybe I'm not clear on. When you say broad use, what the city can do, I make sure that the city just can't make changes as the city wants to. It has to be approved.
Yes.
They have to go through the same approval process. Anybody else, they just can't walk in and do what they want.
I believe so. Yes.
One example I have in my head. I mean, obviously we just did a site plan review, right? So any Commissioner Barker, any major changes to the site plan would go through a site plan review. But one thing that I like about changing the zoning is it's a different type of use than residential, right? You've got different parking requirements. You've got different, maybe even setback requirements for things, and different signage requirements. It's different use, and I think it fundamentally needs to be in a different zone. I've loved the idea of having a civic zone, and I think it does apply to parks and plazas, and so but I think to your concern, I do think we'd still have to have a site plan review. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, to make fundamental changes.
No, I was just making sure the public understood that.
Gotcha.
Because sometimes they say, well, now the city has a civic thing, they can walk in and do what they want to do. And that's not, I want to make sure they understand, no, they can't. The staff go through all their approvals.
Yeah, that simply having the city property in a civic zone, what we determined when we decided to create that zone is essentially it kind of makes a couple of more steps that the city goes through far as public awareness and public hearings to change things or to do things with the city property. And ultimately that's the advantages. It really allows the city to be more open and work, I guess, working with the citizens, and somebody all of a sudden sees, oh, wait, you're doing something there. This, on the simple example that we have here of the map, I mean, that's one, just looking at the zoning map, and somebody, it highlights those areas, knowing that, it's important to understand that, the city can, on their property, they can put about any use that's a civic use in any zone. And so it's not that the civic zone creates additional uses that the city's allowed to do. It just simply separates it. And what it does is requires the city to go through a couple of more steps on the approval process to do a few things to get something approved or what they want to do. So it really, I can't think of the term I'm thinking of, involving the public to be more open and
transparent.
That's the word. So
one technical note, there should be Julian and Lynn, there should be a document that actually has the park outlined in red. This is, I didn't realize it, but the document you're showing right now, that's not it either, unfortunately, but what was
Go
showing is
down one more
attachment A.
page.
If you go down a few more pages, there's the ordinance with the property outlined in red, and that's the correct attachment A. It's page 48, I believe. Anyway, I just wanted to be clear about that because that's how the ordinance refers to it. So kind of a technicality, but
Yeah, so what's being shown on the screen now is what existing and what will after, what the rezone, then it will show highlight on the zoning map, so it stands out. All right, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. This time we'll officially open the public hearing for the Mountain View Park zone change from R110 to the Civic Zone. If anybody here would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and Lynn will select you. Or
I have a couple of raised hands and I have a question.
Okay.
Tony Spencer asks, what is the advantage of changing this zoning and are there any disadvantages?
Okay. We'll make note of the comments and then we can address them at the end.
Okay, next is Frank Eddy.
Okay.
Frank, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Thank you. Frank Eddy, I'm a resident on 3100 North. I'm sorry, 3200 North, just property owner just to southwest of the park. I agree with the civic changes on this. Can you hear me?
Would you please state your address?
847 East, 3200 North, North Ogden. So I appreciate all the explanation and the coverage here, and I believe that it's good to create a baseline to show that there's nothing being changed so that future changes can be recognized and shared with the public. So I do appreciate that. Question I have is more around the civic law and how does that change the use of the park by the public? Does it add new, I'll say, restrictions or openness for usage of the park or approval from the city for public use?
Okay. As far as the use as a park and what's allowed in a park and the use as a park, there's nothing that would change. So as something is used, the use kind of what its proposed use is what's limiting what's allowed and what's not.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Phil Swanson. Phil, will you state your address, please?
857 East, 3250 North. We back up to the park. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. We just want to say that we're appreciative of the work that you're doing. We love the Civic Zone and we're glad to see this park and all the parks in the city be set aside and clearly marked and delineated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all the hands that I see.
Okay. Well, then I think we've kind of discussed the advantages or disadvantages with Tony Spencer's question of what's the advantages or disadvantages. Simply the advantages, I guess, simply put, is to clearly delineate what properties are within the city boundaries that are city properties, owned properties, and their potential uses as civic bodies. I don't see that there is any disadvantages other than it gives you different color on the map. Any commissioners?
So yeah, I think there's one advantage we haven't really laid out, and that is, I think it's just kind of understood, but it's granularity, right? This gives us a new zone, and should we want to make changes to that zone, for example, if we decide that it should have a different lighting ordinance or a different parking ordinance or something like that, setback, then it applies to a residential zone. We can be more granular with those standards at that time, should they change. and apply it just to this zone. It's just not applying a one size fits all blanket policy to the land all around it. It's saying, okay, the park can be a little different, and it's not just the park, it would be the civic zone. This is going to be used full for plazas and parks and monument areas and even potentially libraries, city buildings, things like that. So granularity is the advantage I see. And not that anything is fundamentally changed in the zone now, but down the road, should we have a need for something, it can be applied to one zone and not the other. You know, we may decide that VRBOs are you know, able to have in a residential area, but not the civic zone, for example. Right. So.
And in that same stream of thought, Commissioner, right now in the R110 zone, structures are allowed to be 10 feet away from the property line. And in the civic zone, if I remember correctly, the setbacks are greater. So it's intended to, in a lot of ways, limit where structures can be put and make it, you know, basically preserve the type and style of facilities that are existing now. So I think you're right that even though it may seem like it's a change that makes it easier on the city, in a lot of ways, the restrictions imposed with the new zone are much more restrictive than the R110 zone or the other single family residential zones.
Thanks, John. All right, do we have any other public comments?
I don't see anyone else.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that, Brandon.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, discussion. Commissioners, anything further to really discuss? This is pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council to approve the rezone from R110 to the civic zone.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Commissioner Barker,
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Mason,
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro,
Yes.
Commissioner Arner,
Yes.
Commissioner Waite,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that recommendation will be passed on to the city council. And they will have the final rezone. I believe, do they have a public hearing at that meeting as well, Rob?
It will be a public meeting, but not a public hearing.
Okay. So if you want to comment on that one, you do so at the public comments at the beginning of the meeting rather than on the item. All right. Sorry, I got to scroll back up. All right. We'll move on to item number 9, the Zone Text Amendment 2018-3, a discussion and direction regarding flag lot options when creating a sensitive lands chapter of the city code. Presenter Rob Scott. Rob?
Let's see, Lynn, can I share?
Go ahead.
Again? Now, I have a confession to make to the Planning Commission. I unfortunately was a failure when I came to art class. When I was in 7th grade, I think I got a C-. Anyway, you're now going to get a chance to see a little bit of my artwork, but to Commissioner Mason's point about flag lots, here we go. I wanted to, we had quite a bit of discussion of that. I've done a little bit of research and I've got some more to do, but I wanted to just give you some basic premises for if you would decide strictly within the sensitive areas, sensitive land area, in that zoning to allow flag lots. They would not be allowed anywhere else in the city. I think it's been clear that that's the city policy, and we're strictly proposing this as an alternative from the standpoint that you might find a situation where on this diagram, can you see my cursor?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a street, and then you have enough topography that would not allow for a street to go up on this hillside. And it would make more sense to, from the standpoint of drainage and the geologic circumstances of the property and so forth, and topography, that there actually are some buildable areas back behind the street, but it doesn't make sense to actually put a street in and stub and put a cul-de-sac in. So that's the premise. So let me just identify some of the things that I've looked at, a couple ordinances and the one that we've proposed for you to consider. So the first part of this would be that the planning commission would have to make a finding that due to topographic conditions, sensitive land concerns, where streets cannot or should not be extended, that would make it a potential for having a flag lot. The other thing that I've researched is that instead of having a private drive, to differentiate between this and private drives, some ordinances describe that access as a lane instead of a private drive. Obviously the devil's in the details, but that's the way that it would occur. And some of the ordinances talk about the maximum length of these lanes, the width of them, and depending on how far they are, you want to make sure that the lane is sufficiently wide in order to provide for not only the access of the residents and visitors, but also in the event of a fire, that the fire marshal and the fire trucks and other safety equipment would be able to access homes in that circumstance. The ordinances that I've looked at talk about that there should be a maximum height for buildings that are on these on the flag lots themselves, so that they're not peering down and into the backs of the homes that are fronting on the street. Also, it talks about that those should be larger. The buildable areas would be defined, but the lots themselves would also be larger, so that there would not be as much of an impact. There would be specific setbacks for the buildings. There'd also be a percentage of grade that would be identified. I'll be working with Lauren to come up with an appropriate percentage. We don't want to get something that's so steep that it becomes unsafe in that situation. So let's see. I've got a couple other notes here. So basically, and also the number of flag lots, probably not more than 2 off of any one flag or private lane, as I've been describing them. Those should also, the ordinances that I've looked at allow for these lanes to either be an easement or actually be something that occurs on the plat. Some kind of an irrevocable easement, or some kind of a mechanism to do that. And also, one of the ordinances had a standard that said that the lanes, depending on how far back you go, that would determine the width of the lane along with the number of homes that would be accessed to the lane. And also there would have to be some kind of an address or something that would be prominent off of the street so people would know, obviously, that there's a home there and how to go about it. So before I get into any specific writing, if that appears to be something that the Planning Commission is interested in, I can do some more research and work on creating some actual standards that would allow for this. And I know that Commissioner Mason is going to want to see this diagram in the ordinance, correct?
In bronze on the side of each building, flagged. So my thoughts, Rob, since you didn't ask, kind of you did, but I'm against flag lots, and I don't have a lot of confidence that we could craft an ordinance. Not that I don't have confidence in your abilities, but it just seems almost impossible using the English language to craft an ordinance that would create flag lots that couldn't be abused. But you've kind of shown me that, and I had my eyes open a little bit, that if it was a big enough area, I guess that's possible. But I think I would support only in big, large areas, because I think these kind of things would look cool on acre lots and things like that. But when they're stacked too close to their neighbors and stuff, I'm going to oppose it. For as long as I'm on the Planning Commission, I think.
I would agree with that as well. I think the idea of a flag lot to work with topography and everything, I'm okay with that, but I don't want it to be an excuse to then say what was going to be a 20,000 square foot lot now can be 2 10s or a 12 and a 12, because now we'll allow them to stick one back there on the steeper slope. But in the instance that, in my mind, I think of the more of the sensitive lands of some of the hillside areas that we have, like even in the HP 3 zone that requires a 2-acre lot, that 2-acre lot may be accessed by less than minimum frontage on a road that goes, 300 feet back before it's to the buildable area. And so in those instances, I think it works well and could create a situation that does work. But, and so if there's a way to do it to where we're not going to be allowing it on, smaller lots, obviously we've talked about it's only allowed on a case by case basis, and the applicant would have to prove the need for it. But I would almost say, I don't want to see it in, if we have sensitive lands, it's only for this area, but this zone, but overlay zone, but I wouldn't want to see it on, say an 8 or 10,000 foot lots, because then you really feel like you're stacking them behind the other homes. So
you remember that we said the minimum size of lot in the sensitive area is dependent upon the slope that those lots are on. So if you, for example, on the street, you had an area that was below that 10%, they could potentially have an R110, so it could be a 10,000 square foot lot. And then as the steeper segment of it up there where I've listed buildable area is, so what we've said is that it has to be 125%. So it would be whatever that is, 12,000 or 14,000 feet would be the minimum. You could actually do it even more than that. You could even, instead of a percentage, you could say that those flag lots had to be a minimum size. So you could say they had to be a minimum of 15,000 square feet or even bigger than that if you wanted to.
yeah, I think that's something we just have to look at, whether it's, I mean, when you talk a percentage, because I wouldn't want it to apply like it using the HP2 zone as one example of saying a 2-acre lot, so to have a flag lot, it has to be 4 acres behind it, because I think those would have enough space. But in the instance of in an R110 zone, and say, well, it has to be at least double the fronting lot, to justify it. That, because what we want to do is in a unique situation, I feel like we'd want to be able to make it work and incorporate it, but we don't want to create it as a tool that development can then try and squeeze or shoehorn in additional lots. And so I feel like it should be allowed, because in some instances that would be the best way, and we don't need or want a public street that might go 300 feet to a dead end that only services one lot, just simply to satisfy a frontage issue in a sensitive land area. But so I don't know, just decipher that. That's my comment anyway. Other commissioners?
Yeah, I think about this, and I mean, the biggest thing we have with the flag lots is we've got some in the, what we call, I've been calling the Old Town area, we've got some lots that are pretty good sized. And that's exactly what a lot of developers were looking at doing, was buying a 0.6 acre lot and trying to shoehorn 2 or 3 lots in, or 2 or 3 building lots in there. Right in somebody's backyard. I look at these, I think we could either control it with, I mean, you can just say outright, no R1 zones. This isn't an option in an R1 zone. The other thing, and like you said, Rob, the devil's in the details. I've seen some of these lanes turn into real sticky issues. Where one, it's a shared lane, and then one of the property owners wants to sell and do something different with the property, and the other property owner, who was originally sharing, even with shared access agreements, is kind of left holding the bag. So we would have to really look at that. But I think on the larger lots, I mean, simply no R1, this doesn't apply in an R1 zone. So possibly in an RE20, possibly, in the HP zones, but nowhere else. The other thing is you could probably control it by setbacks, require much larger setbacks. And you mentioned that as a potential tool. But yeah, I have seen places where these work out really, really nice, and they're just great properties. And they're not looking in somebody else's backyard, but they are behind another house. So I think it could be a good tool to have.
I agree. I just don't know how you draft it where you say it works here and not there, but
that's a tough thing. I mean, one example I'd use is I have a subdivision that I'm working on right now, and all the lots are over 1 acre, and it's a cul-de-sac, and trying to make it all work, one of the largest lots in there, to gain the frontage that's required because it's at the back of the cul-de-sac, it makes it difficult to fit it. And so in that instance, it would be considered a flag lot because it only has 50 feet of frontage against the cul-de-sac, but it's a 1.7 acre lot, and at the 30-foot setback, it's 50 feet, but at an 80-foot setback, it's 120 feet wide. So it's just kind of a unique situation and so that's what's tough in some of those cases where it's like, well, that isn't behind another house and it's not a private lane going there, but it would be classified as a flag because it doesn't have the necessary frontage. So creating a tool that makes some situations work, I think, can be beneficial. But that's the most difficult thing. And I think that's when we addressed last time is we'd rather just err on the side of no, they're not allowed than try and craft it correctly. And I think in the sensitive lands, that probably adds a even more narrow window to have that ability. So, that may be something that is okay, in my opinion. So
my basic question for you tonight, commissioners, is do you want me to go further with this, or are you ready to just say, don't worry about flag lots?
I think in the sensitive lands, I would say I'm okay with maybe take it a little further and let us look at some real examples. I think, not to make you feel bad about your artist skills, Rob, but maybe a little bit better examples of how a situation might that work. And with consideration what we've talked about tonight in larger lot scenarios, because in my opinion, if it's anything, the sensitive lands ordinance is an overlay under an existing zone. So in my opinion, if it's an R1 zone, you would have a minimum of a double. The lot behind wouldn't be a percentage. It would have to be 200% larger than the front lot or something like that. So it's a substantial difference, not just modifying a little bit of a tweak or something.
Mm-hmm. A minimum requirement for me includes large lots, and I'm willing to look at it, but I want to see these on at least 3/4 of an acre, probably.
Well, I'll be happy to start writing some of these standards down and get them back to you, and you can further discuss, and we'll see if this is something that we want to do or not. So I appreciate your input tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
All right. Item 10, remarks from planning commissioners. Anybody have any comments tonight?
Yeah, do we want to, so there's obviously going to be great interest anytime we put a big sign in a park that says we're going to change the zoning of this park, right? I don't blame anyone for being concerned when they see that sign. They're going to want to attend the meeting. They're going to have a lot of questions. And I've been sitting here debating in my mind, is it better to do them all at once and have to only go through that one time? Because we're going to be answering the same questions every time. And what do we have? Probably 12 parks or so to do. I don't know. I don't know the number, but do we want to tackle those all at once with a great big meeting where we can answer those questions one time? Or is there enough granularity that we want to take them piece by, one by one? I'd almost want to get them all over at the same time. But,
yeah, I think the difficulty is at the same time is if we're doing site plans for each one of them, we just roll through them one after the other.
Yeah,
if it's simply a rezone collectively, we answer the rezone questions and do all that. And maybe that's what we need to do is if we need to see them, if we need to do site plans for all of them, then maybe my thought is we do one rezone meeting to rezone all of the parcels. So that part's done and we've explained it.
Well,
and then simply we do site plan review and approvals.
There's one more consideration, and I'd like to hear from staff on that, though. What does that? Obviously, when we put that sign, we have 5-10 people show up for the meeting, but they may field 50 to 75 calls about that, right? So is that overwhelming if now they're filling 500 people calling in? Does doing them one at a time make it more manageable for staff? That's a consideration for me too.
So
go ahead, John.
We had anticipated running this one through because it was a very simple and straightforward park, and making sure the process worked right as far as, is this what the commission wants to see? And I think we had intended on bringing them back in groups, maybe not all 12 or 13 parks at the same time, but groups of 3 or 4, because we think it is good for if a resident has a concern about the zone as well as the site plan, that they can attend the same meeting as opposed to having to come to 2 different meetings. I think that's what we talked about, but we might tweak that based on what the planning staff is seeing as well.
I was just going to say that, the idea of doing 3 or 4 is kind of a middle road. And I think that it would balance, simplifying things with making sure we don't get flooded with calls.
The other comment I would have is that we have one site that actually has an approved site plan. That's the Public Works building and that complex over there. So I'm not sure if we have some others that actually have approved site plans or not. I guess Barker Park has an approved site plan as well. So
I'm going to be gone anyway whenever you do the Public Works building.
We might not have a quorum the night you do Barker Park.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Barker. Yeah, that's the other one I don't want. Yeah, no. Okay, well,
Okay, any other comments?
oh, yeah, those are
Commissioners?
just comments, and I mean, I'm not making a recommendation or anything. I just wanted to discuss that. But, you know, I'm comfortable with whatever staff decides.
So, and I'm going to get a report from Julian tomorrow as far just to see how many of these parks that we've actually been able to produce. He's a starving student and ready to move on to other bigger and better things. We'd love to have him complete all of them, but we'll see how many he's got done and see how we can keep chipping away at them.
Rob, I actually have most of them done. I believe I have one more to do, and I can have that done by this week.
Julian, dude, hey, you need to take out as many student loans as you can right now. Just
Yeah.
a little insider tip there.
And if you need to know what to spend the money on, just ask Commissioner Mason. He'll help you.
I actually used my student loans and bought a pickup truck when I was in college because it was.
Hey, you're a student. You got to get to school.
Yeah, but if, anyway, I'll reserve my comment on that. But, I mean, never mind.
All right, moving on. Any other commissioners with comments? How many of you bought vehicles with your student loans or any of that stuff? Confessions of commissioners?
I paid for a house.
I didn't know student loans were an option.
Mine was a real small one. I have a question.
My student loan was called Visa.
Yeah, that too. I have a question. On 2600 at about 2025 East, there's a house being built over a house, and the house exists, now they're adding to it. A long time ago, we approved the garage for it, which they did add. On the east side of that house, we frame a new part of the house, and there's only about 2 foot setback. And I'm not sure how that come to be. It's not 10 feet, it sits almost right on the property line. I'm not sure if anything can be done or if that's just the way it's going to have to be.
You talking about the house that looks like the front of a commercial building?
Oh yes, that one looks ugly as can be. I wonder what they're really doing.
We can't regulate ugly, but
no.
So I don't know on that.
Commissioner, if you could give me the exact address, then we'll look into it.
Okay, I'll have to look.
Yeah, just email it to me.
Okay,
It's right across the road, right across the street on 2600 where the road coming out of Oakland Park meets. I think at that intersection. Isn't that it?
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, if you drove straight through there, you drive right into their driveway. If there is one anymore.
Or the service bay of the auto shop.
Service bay.
Okay. Any other comments? Rob, how about you or Brandon or Kaya? Anything tonight?
We are moving right. We're continuing to progress with our land use code. And we have been identifying with our consultants a series of policy questions associated with the ordinances. So I'm going to be working with John to set up a joint work session with the city council so we can review those policy questions just to make sure we won't be reviewing code language, but it's basic things. I'll give an example. Throughout our ordinances, it identifies the city council as an approving authority for subdivisions. Well, we haven't done that in a long time, way before even me, that I came to the city. So it's those kinds of policy issues that we're just going to make sure that we pose those to both bodies, and so that we can continue on and complete our work and get that project wrapped up.
Okay.
That's it for me, other than to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Thank you. John, anything from you?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, that concludes our meeting. I would like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Make sure, as it was stated to me earlier this week, that you only can have 6 people in a group and 30 people at a funeral. So make sure you bless and dedicate that turkey that you kill and have its funeral properly. A motion for adjournment.
We'll just have a drive-by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I'll make
I
a
move that we
motion.
adjourn.
All right, motion and
I'll
Scott,
second.
did you second that? Somebody?
I will. I second.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.